Welcome to this presentation on global warming, where our planet stands at a defining crossroads. The left image of Earth underscores the scale of what's at stake, and the text introduces the urgent truth. Evidence is unmistakable, impacts are accelerating, and the window for meaningful action is rapidly closing. In the following slides, we'll explore where we are and how we can respond. This chapter opens by focusing on the unprecedented heat we are experiencing, shown here with a thermometer image that captures the message visually. I'll walk you through why current temperatures are extraordinary compared with historical records, what's driving this rapid warming, and why those trends demand immediate attention from policymakers and communities alike. Looking at 2025, global temperatures from January through August measured about 1.42 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, placing this year among the hottest on record. This slide puts that figure in historical context, noting that the past decade represents the warmest stretch in more than a century and a half, a trend that exceeds natural variability and signals systemic change. The temperature anomaly map on the right reveals how warming is unevenly distributed across the globe, concentrating intense heat in specific regions and stressing ecosystems and communities. Rather than listing numbers, focus on the pattern. Some areas face extreme heat and others shifting climate zones, and those disparities magnify vulnerability and demand targeted adaptation. This page highlights greenhouse gases at record highs, with atmospheric CO2 concentrations reaching levels not seen in millions of years, and global temperatures rising accordingly. Beyond the headline numbers, methane and ocean heat content are also at unprecedented levels, creating feedbacks that reinforce warming and push the climate system toward new and riskier states. The polar regions are in crisis, with the Arctic seeing dramatic sea ice loss and the Antarctic remaining well below historical averages. The image of melting ice emphasizes the physical reality. Accelerating polar warming contributes to sea level rise and disrupts ocean circulation, with consequences felt far beyond the poles. Chapter 2 introduces the present-day impacts of climate change, showing how those rising temperatures are already translating into extreme events and cascading consequences. The visual contrast and chapter title prepare us to examine how heat, storms, and shifting weather patterns are intersecting now to affect lives, infrastructure, and ecosystems. Across the globe, we've seen cascading disasters this year, from devastating South Asian monsoon floods that displaced millions to catastrophic wildfires in California that consumed vast forest areas and released large carbon pulses. Even volcanic reawakening and an intense solar storm complicated the picture, illustrating how climate extremes can interact with other natural risks. Climate change is creating a double threat, producing extremes at both ends of the spectrum that often occur simultaneously in different regions. The result is stretched emergency response systems, overwhelmed communities, and rising costs as floods and fires, droughts and storms demand both immediate relief and long-term resilience planning. The human cost of these changes is profound. Extreme events have displaced millions, creating climate-driven migration and acute humanitarian strains. Food security is threatened by disrupted agricultural patterns, and the poorest communities suffer disproportionately, deepening global inequalities and undermining progress towards sustainable development. Chapter 3 turns to the global response, noting both progress and glaring gaps. The image of international talks suggests cooperation, but what follows is a sobering assessment of how current efforts measure up to the scale of the problem and where ambition and finance still fall short. COP30 and the Climate Action 2025 report paint a sobering picture. Despite advances in renewables and policy frameworks, none of the 45 key climate indicators are currently on track to meet the 1.5-degree target. Emissions rose by about 2% in 2024, while fossil fuel finance continued to grow, revealing a worrying disconnect between goals and financial flows. There are bright spots worth noting. Electric vehicle adoption is expanding worldwide, Solar and wind capacity keeps breaking records, and private climate finance surged to roughly $1.3 trillion in 2023. Yet public finance and equitable access lag behind, meaning these gains still need broader policy support to be truly transformative. Chapter 4 frames the challenge of overshooting 1.5 degrees Celsius and why it matters. The tempered lab image underscores the scientific stakes. Temporary overshoot is increasingly likely under current trajectories, and managing that risk requires far deeper, faster emissions cuts, coupled with effective carbon removal strategies. The UNEP emissions gap chart on this slide illustrates a stark reality. Current national pledges fall far short of the required emissions reductions through 2030 and beyond, meaning a temporary overshoot of 1.5 degrees is likely unless commitments accelerate. The visual gap between pledges and required cuts captures the defining challenge of this generation. The path forward aims to minimize and reverse any temperature overshoot through a three-phase approach: rapid deployment of renewables and zero-carbon infrastructure by 2025 to 2030, deep decarbonization of industry and agriculture across 2030 to 2050, and large-scale carbon removal through the latter half of the century. The goal is to keep any overshoot as short, small, and safe as possible. Chapter 5 shifts to innovations and sources of hope, highlighting how technology, finance, and collective action can change trajectories when scaled and equitably applied. The accompanying image of researchers conveys that scientific and technological breakthroughs are central to delivering solutions at the speed and scale required. The Climate Promise 2025 slide spotlights UNDP support, showing that about 85% of developing countries received assistance to raise ambition and implement adaptation plans, while early warning coverage has roughly doubled since 2015. These actions strengthen resilience on the front lines and help protect vulnerable communities from worsening impacts. Collective action is powerful. Expanding early warning systems saves lives. Innovative finance mobilizes resources. Technology transfer accelerates clean transitions, and inclusive policies ensure benefits reach those most at risk. The image of community tree planting captures how local engagement combined with global support can drive meaningful change across sectors. The conclusion is clear. The science is unequivocal, and the path is defined, but time is short. Every year, above 1.5 degrees risks irreversible harm to ecosystems and people. Yet rapid, large-scale climate action can still alter our trajectory. The imperative is to act now, aligning policy, finance, and societal will to secure a livable future for coming generations.